Hi, this is Kevin at the Virtual Planetarium at Raritan Valley Community College. Welcome to our weekly Star Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the Pleiades, a group of stars that we saw in last week's Star Talk. But before we do that, let's talk about our upcoming moon phases. We have a new moon on December 4th, we have a first quarter moon on December 10th, and then we have the next full moon is going to be on December 18th. Now, like I said, today we're going to be talking about the Pleiades, which is also known as the Seven Sisters. This is a group of stars that we can find very easily at night if we look towards the east just after dark right now. They're actually up all night, but it's a lot easier to see them a few hours after the sun sets. That way they're a little bit higher over the horizon. So right now we have our planetarium sky set up for about 6 o'clock, or actually about 6:40 at night. And again, we are looking towards the eastern part of the sky, which is why we have this E right here. Now, if you look towards this direction, and again, about 6 o'clock, we find this small group of stars in the sky with a very peculiar shape. Like I mentioned last week, it kind of looks like a tiny, tiny dipper in the sky, but it's not the Little Dipper. The Little Dipper is a lot bigger in the sky. It's, again, towards the northern part of the sky. Actually, let me show you all where it is. If we go towards the north, we have the Little Dipper right here. So this is the Little Dipper. It's this big thing in the sky over here, and then the Pleiades that we're talking about is this tiny little thing right over here. And it's very easy to find because there's really nothing else like it around it. Everything else is like a star, but this is noticeably a group of stars that you can see very close together. And these are the Pleiades. This is what's called an open cluster of stars, which means the stars are very close together, so they're bound by gravity. But the open part means that it has no particular shape. This one just happens to look like this because we're looking at it in this direction. These stars are bluish in color, and that means that they're very young and very hot stars. And when you look at them with just your eyes, you can see about 6 or 7 stars. So if we zoom out, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and there's maybe a 7th one right here. But when we zoom into it, or when we look at it through a pair of binoculars or through a telescope, you can see a few dozen. So it's really cool how many more stars we can see with a small pair of binoculars or a telescope that we can't see with just our eyes. Now, a great thing about the Pleiades, like I said, it's that they're very, very easy to find. They're very easy to spot in the sky, and because of that, many cultures have come up with a bunch of different stories for them. For example, the reason they're known as the Seven Sisters is because of Greek mythology. In the Greek story, the Pleiades are the 7 daughters of the Titan Atlas, who is known for carrying the world on his shoulders. And there are a few variations of the story. The first variation says that Orion the Hunter, which is a wintertime constellation, was pursuing the 7 sisters. And so Zeus put up the 7 sisters in the sky to comfort their father. So Orion still follows them in the sky, and this is a cool story because Orion does actually follow the 7 sisters. If we were to fast forward time, we see that Orion is coming up behind the 7 sisters and moving in the same direction as they do, going from east to west. So that's pretty cool. Let's move back time a little bit and go back to 6 o'clock. Now, another variation of that story says that the 7 sisters were supposed to marry gods. 6 of them did marry gods and got to be placed in the sky because they were able to go up to Mount Olympus. But one of them, Merope, married a human. And since mortals weren't allowed on Mount Olympus, she had to leave the sky to be on Earth with her husband. And this myth tries to explain why we only see 6 of them with just our eyes when they're called the 7 sisters in this Greek mythology. But these aren't the only stories. There are many, many other stories. For example, there's a bunch of Native American stories that deal with the Pleiades in the sky as well. One of my favorite ones comes from the San Joaquin Valley, and it tells that the stars were 7 young wives that were fed up with life and bored of their husbands and their duties. So they decided to go up into the skies and become the Pleiades. One version of the story says that the husbands tried to catch up with them and turn into the Hyades. And it's also interesting because this is the Hyades down here. It's another cluster of stars that is just behind the Pleiades rising in the sky. And so in the nighttime sky, it looks like the Hyades are following the Pleiades. but these husbands will never catch up with their wives, so they will spend the rest of the time just trying to catch up with them in the sky. Now, another Native American story from the southeastern part of the US tells a story of 7 boys who danced and danced until their feet left the earth and they ascended up into the sky as this group of 7 stars. And there's so many other stories. I'm going to put a link in the description of this video so we can see just how many stories there are, but it's really cool to see that since so many cultures could see this one very easy to spot group of stars, they all came up with different stories for it, so it's really cool. You should all try to go outside and find the Pleiades. Again, they're very easy to find. They're rising as the sun sets, but maybe wait a few hours so they get a little higher up in the sky. And you can use a pair of binoculars to see them a little better and see more than just 7 stars that you're going to see with just your eyes. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Hope you learned something new. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. We're going to be putting out new videos every week talking about the stars or astronomy in general. Once again, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a great week.